Thank you, Eric, Greg, and the entire Finovate staff for this incredible opportunity to address our industry's best and brightest. I'm Deepak, CTO and co-founder. This is Samir, our head of Asian operations, and we are excited to present to you how we leverage mobile phones and the crowdsourced intelligence of our users to detect and prevent fraud in real time. A couple of days ago, I was at a store trying to purchase an adapter for my phone, but I had to leave without buying because my credit card charges were declined. Apparently, I'd been flagged for fraud because I was traveling. After spending some time with my bank on the phone, we finally figured things out. But I still don't have the adapter. The merchant lost a sale, and the bank's down $30 having spent time with me on the phone. Everyone's unhappy. Banks lose billions of dollars every single year in fraud resolution costs, and that is what we help resolve. Our flagship product, Zighra Shield, is an intelligent mobile app plugin that banks can embed into their existing mobile banking apps with just a few lines of code. As a user, let's move to the mobile app, please. As a user, I merely update or download my mobile banking app and log in. This automatically ties my credit and debit cards to my mobile phone. It is as simple as that. The entire process is completely invisible to the user. Now, I can log out and go about my life knowing that I'm being protected from fraud. If my bank had used our technology, instead of blocking my card, they could have made a simple automated API call to Zighra servers by providing, let's move to the web app, please. By providing my mobile user ID, basic transaction information, including the amount of the transaction, the location, the vendor name, and the last 4 digits of my credit card number. Banks can optionally add an additional layer of security by asking me a personal verification question, such as my favorite destination. Now, Zighra sends this transaction through a host of visible and invisible checks. One of the checks that we perform is whether the transaction was within the proximity of my cell phone. Another check that we perform is whether anyone else in our user base has flagged this transaction as potentially fraudulent. And if we still suspect the transaction as fraudulent, an automatic verification message is sent to the user's cell phone. So let's switch to the mobile app, please. So as a user, I receive a message saying that a suspicious transaction attempt has occurred. I swipe through it. I take a look at the transaction. So this looks like a valid transaction. So I'm going to enter in my verification answer and allow the transaction. This is how, as a user, I can validate a transaction in real time. Now let's go back to the web app and take a look at what the bank sees at their end. I'm going to select the latest transaction. The bank sees that the transaction has been authenticated by the user. They also see that the user was alerted because we didn't have enough information to validate the reliability of the transaction. Now, since the user has authenticated it, the bank doesn't have to block my card. So I can buy the adapter, the merchant makes a sale, and the bank just saved $10 to $30 by avoiding a false positive. Everyone's happy. Now, let's take a look at a questionable transaction. The transaction amount here is $645. The location is an online transaction. The vendor is bad buy. Now, Zighra sends this transaction through the same visible and invisible checks. A few of the checks that we perform is proximity correlation, mobile contextual check, and the crowdsource check, among many others. It looks like the crowdsource check has failed, which initiated an alert to be sent to the user's cell phone. Can we switch back to the mobile? Thank you. So I see the message, I swipe through it again. And this time it looks like a fraudulent transaction, so I'm going to enter in my verification answer and flag the transaction. So this is how, as a user, I can prevent a fraudulent transaction on my account in real time. Can we go back to the bank's view? Thank you. And let's take a look at the latest transaction. The bank sees that the user has declined the transaction. They also see that 34 other users in the user base has flagged this transaction as potentially fraudulent. And this is what essentially alerted the user to this transaction, helped protect them against fraud. This is how banks can harness the collective intelligence of the users to detect and prevent fraud in real time. As more and more users flag a specific transaction, the bank systems get smarter. And they're able to leverage this valuable crowdsourced information from their mobile users to protect everyone in the user base without essentially interrupting them every single time. So what we have shown you here today is sophisticated technology behind the scenes, presented via a very simple and intuitive user experience to the end user. Let's summarize. We help banks and financial institutions leverage real-time, mobile, and crowdsourced information to detect fraud, reduce call center costs, and engage customers. To learn more on how we can help banks and financial institutions enlist their customers in their fight against fraud, please drop by our booth and we would love to chat. Thank you very, very much for your time.